The billionaire's fiancée pointed her manicured finger at the trembling waitress and screamed, "She stole my diamond bracelet!" Security rushed in. Customers stared. But when the CEO reviewed the footage, he went pale. What he saw wasn't just about a bracelet. It revealed a secret that would destroy everything he thought he knew. Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The girl in the window was disappearing. Not visibly. Her reflection was still there, dark eyes fixed on the glittering Manhattan skyline. But in every way that mattered, Grace Mitchell was learning how to vanish. She had spent 3 years perfecting the art of invisibility, of being present without being remarkable, of existing in the spaces between other people's attention. But invisibility, she was discovering, was its own kind of prison. And sometimes, when you've learned to hide well enough, you forget how to be seen. It was on an ordinary Friday evening in early spring that the first crack appeared in her carefully constructed world. She didn't know it yet. She was too busy serving ossobuco to a quiet man in an expensive suit, too focused on maintaining the professional neutrality that had become her shield. But when their eyes met for the first time across the candlelit restaurant, something shifted in the careful mathematics of her survival. His name was Jordan Blackwell, and he had everything except what he actually wanted. She was a server named Grace, and she had nothing except the steel determination that kept her breathing. On the surface, they had no connection. In truth, they were mirror images of each other's loneliness. Two people who had learned to survive in isolation, about to discover that survival wasn't the same as living. But before either of them could understand what was happening between them, a third person was already making plans to destroy it. Victoria Ashford, Jordan's fiancée, saw the connection and recognized it as a threat to everything she had calculated and constructed. And she was willing to do something terrible to protect her investment. What Victoria didn't account for was that Grace had secrets deeper than any background investigation could uncover. And when the truth finally emerged, not the truth about the stolen necklace, but the truth about who Grace really was, it would shatter everyone's understanding of love, loyalty, and the possibility of redemption. The rain hammered against the windows of the modest apartment on the edge of Queens as Grace Mitchell stared at her bank account on her laptop. $17.42. That was all that stood between her and absolute destitution. She closed the laptop slowly, as if the action itself might change the number, and rubbed her temples. At 29 years old, she had convinced herself that life couldn't get worse. She was wrong. 3 years ago, Grace had made the most desperate decision of her life. She had disappeared. Not from the face of the earth entirely, but from the world she had known, a world of penthouse suites, designer gowns, and expectations so suffocating that she had nearly drowned under their weight. She had been Sophia Chen then, daughter of billionaires, heiress to an empire spanning 3 continents. But Sophia Chen came with chains made of gold, and Grace Mitchell had learned to breathe. The eviction notice taped to her apartment door was barely legible from the coffee stains and water damage it had suffered. 30 days. That was all the time she had left before she would be out on the street. The irony wasn't lost on her. She had escaped from unimaginable wealth only to fall into unimaginable poverty. Her parents had cut her off completely when she refused to return home. No money, no resources, nothing but the clothes she wore and the determination that had kept her alive this long. Grace stood at the window, looking out at the rain-soaked city below. Manhattan glittered in the distance, its buildings piercing the gray sky like judgmental fingers. Somewhere out there were restaurants, hotels, places that hired people without references or explanations. She had survived on cash jobs for 3 years, careful never to stay anywhere long enough to build connections. The anonymity had been her sanctuary, but now it was suffocating her. Her phone buzzed. A message from her coworker, Donna, at the clothing store where she had been working for the last 6 months. "They're cutting hours. Might let you go end of week. Sorry, babe." Grace read it twice, then set the phone down without responding. The universe had a way of pushing you when you were already drowning. She pulled on her rain jacket, grabbed the worn leather folder containing her resume, a carefully constructed fiction of her work history, and stepped out into the storm. It was time to find new employment. It was time to survive another day. The city streets were alive despite the weather, people rushing from place to place with the particular urgency of New Yorkers. Grace had learned their language, their hurried indifference. She blended in easily, just another struggling young woman trying to make it in the city. As she walked, her reflection caught in store windows. Dark hair pulled back severely, minimal makeup, clothes that were clean but worn, eyes that held secrets no one would ever guess. She looked like 1,000 other people. That was exactly how she wanted it. By evening, she had visited 4 restaurants and 3 coffee shops. All of them cited the same excuses: experience required, positions filled, come back when we're hiring. The rejection was becoming familiar, but no less painful. As she sat on a bench outside a bodega, eating a $1 slice of pizza that was her dinner, Grace allowed herself 5 minutes of despair. Just 5 minutes. Then she would push it down, pack it away with all the other emotions that threatened to break through her carefully constructed facade, and keep moving forward. It was during those 5 minutes that she noticed the luxury black car pulling up to the curb across the street. Through the rain-spattered window, she could see someone inside. A man, tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair and a sharp jawline. He was looking at a phone, completely absorbed. Grace looked away quickly. Men in cars like that belonged to the world she had run from, and she had no intention of going back. Yet something in his profile had struck her, a familiarity that made her heart skip in a way she couldn't explain. She pushed the thought away and finished her pizza, watching the rain begin to lighten as evening turned to night. Jordan Blackwell had everything a man could want, and he hated almost all of it. The power, yes. The influence, certainly. The ability to change the world with a single decision. That was worth the 18-hour days and the constant pressure of a billion-dollar empire. But the rest of it, the social obligations, the gold diggers, the constant expectation that he should be grateful for his impossible life, that he could live without. At 34 years old, he felt older than his grandfather. His office occupied the entire 45th floor of the Blackwell Tower in Midtown Manhattan. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, and from his desk, Jordan could see all the way to Brooklyn. The view had never impressed him. He had grown up with views like this. His childhood bedroom had overlooked the Central Park. Wealth, he was convinced, was a kind of poverty of its own. It impoverished everything it touched, turning genuine moments into transactions, and authentic feelings into strategic maneuvers. Victoria Ashford had been his salvation once. 3 years ago, when he was suffocating under the weight of endless dates and shallow connections, she had appeared at a charity gala looking like she had stepped out of a magazine. She was beautiful, intelligent, and most importantly, she came from money. She understood the world he lived in. She didn't expect him to apologize for his wealth, and she didn't seem interested in exploiting it. Or so he had thought. The engagement ring he had given her 6 months ago had cost more than most people's homes. It had seemed romantic at the time, a declaration that he was ready to share his life with someone. Now, sitting alone in his office on a Friday evening while Victoria attended a charity luncheon, one of dozens she would attend that year, Jordan wondered if he had made a terrible mistake. Victoria was always busy, always at some event, always expanding her social reach. Lately, he had started to notice how she looked at his bank account, how she discussed their prenuptial agreement with a tone that suggested she was negotiating a corporate merger rather than discussing their marriage. His best friend and CFO, Marcus Chen, had warned him. "She's not right for you, man," Marcus had said 3 months ago during a late night at the office. Jordan had dismissed him with the irritation of someone who doesn't want to hear the truth. Marcus was often right, but Jordan had been determined to make this work. He had convinced himself that love took time, that the disconnect he felt with Victoria was just a phase of adjustment. A knock on his office door pulled him from his thoughts. His assistant, Patricia, poked her head in. "You're still here?" she asked, surprised. "It's nearly 8 o'clock. "Nowhere else to be," Jordan lied. There were 100 charity events he could attend, country clubs he could visit, people clamoring for his time and attention. He chose instead to stay in this sterile office, surrounded by the trappings of his success and the evidence of his emptiness. "You should get out of here," Patricia said gently. "Maybe grab some dinner. You look exhausted." Jordan managed a smile. "You're a good person, Patricia. Have you ever considered a career change? You could probably do anything." "I like what I do," she replied simply. "And I like you enough to tell you when you're working too hard. Go on. Get out of here." After Patricia left, Jordan sat alone in the quiet office, listening to the hum of the air conditioning and the distant sounds of the city outside. He pulled up his calendar and looked at his schedule for the next week. A board meeting, a lunch with investors, a dinner with Victoria and her parents, a charity benefit, a meeting with the marketing team. Not a single moment that was truly his. Not a single moment that didn't involve obligation or expectation, or the careful performance of being Jordan Blackwell, billionaire CEO. He stood up and grabbed his jacket. Maybe Patricia was right. Maybe he needed to get out, breathe some fresh air, remember what it felt like to be human instead of a corporate entity. He would go to Marcello's, the Italian restaurant in Tribeca that had been his favorite for years. It was small, intimate, and the owner never made a fuss about his presence. He could sit at a corner table, drink a glass of wine, and pretend for one evening that he was just a regular person enjoying a meal. As he descended in the private elevator, Jordan caught his reflection in the polished steel. A man in an expensive suit, with expensive hair and expensive watch, riding in an expensive elevator to an expensive car. Everything about him screamed wealth and privilege, and yet he had never felt poorer in his life. Marcello's was quiet on a Friday evening, which was exactly what Jordan needed. The owner, an elderly Italian man named Giuseppe, greeted him with the familiarity of an old friend. "Signore Blackwell, good to see you. The usual table?" "Please," Jordan said, and was led to his favorite corner booth, separated from the main dining room by a subtle trellis arrangement. From here, he could observe without being observed, a luxury he had come to appreciate. He had ordered his usual, a glass of Brunello and the osso buco, when he noticed her. She was working a section across the restaurant, moving with an efficient grace that suggested she had been doing this for some time. She was young, or at least younger than him, with dark hair pulled back in a severe bun, and a server's uniform that did nothing to diminish her natural beauty. There was something about her bearing that caught his attention, a certain wariness, as if she was always ready to retreat into herself at a moment's notice. Jordan found himself watching her more than eating his dinner. The way she moved between tables, the slight smile she offered customers that never quite reached her eyes, the careful attention she paid to every detail of service. She was good at her job, he noted. More than good. She was professional without being cold, attentive without being obsequious. She treated every customer as though they were equally important, a practice Jordan found refreshingly rare. When she approached his table to refill his water glass, he looked up. Their eyes met for the first time, and something in his chest shifted unexpectedly. She had dark eyes, almost black, with depths that suggested a complicated inner life. For a moment, he thought he saw something flicker across her face, a moment of recognition, perhaps, before she carefully drew her features back into professional neutrality. "Is everything all right with your meal, sir?" she asked, her voice soft but steady. "Perfect," Jordan said, and found he meant it. "You're new here?" 3 weeks, she confirmed. "My name is Grace. I'll be happy to help with anything you need." Grace. The name suited her, though he suspected it was as carefully chosen as her entire presentation. Something about her suggested carefully curated mysteries. "Grace?" he repeated, testing the name. Do you like working here? The question seemed to surprise her. Most people didn't ask servers personal questions. It's honest work, she said simply. I appreciate that. They held each other's gaze for a moment longer than was strictly professional, and Jordan felt a flutter of something he hadn't experienced in months. Connection. Real, immediate, undeniable connection. Then Grace stepped back, professional mask firmly in place, and moved to the next table. Jordan didn't see her again until she brought his dessert, a rich tiramisu that Giuseppe had apparently insisted on, and the check. With compliments, she said, gesturing to where Giuseppe was visible in the kitchen window, clearly delighted to be feeding a regular patron. Join me for coffee? Jordan asked, the words coming out before he had time to consider their appropriateness. After your shift? Grace's eyes widened slightly. I don't think that would be appropriate, sir. Off the clock, then. Just two people having coffee. He was acutely aware of how presumptuous this was, how it violated the careful boundaries between customer and server, and yet he couldn't seem to stop himself. Unless you have somewhere else you need to be. For a moment, he thought she might refuse. Something in her expression suggested she wanted to. But then something shifted, a small softening in her eyes. There's a diner 2 blocks from here, she said quietly. I finish at 10. You don't have to wait if... I'll wait, Jordan said. When she left his table, Jordan sat back in his chair and tried to make sense of what he had just done. He was engaged. He was supposed to be meeting Victoria for breakfast tomorrow morning to discuss the seating arrangement for their wedding, scheduled for 6 months from now. He had no business asking another woman to meet him, no business feeling this spark of connection, no business looking forward to the next 2 hours more than he had looked forward to anything in months. But he did. And when Grace emerged from the restaurant at 5 minutes past 10, still wearing her server's uniform, but with her hair down around her shoulders, Jordan found himself standing up from the bench where he had been waiting, smiling genuinely for the first time in recent memory. Thank you for coming, he said. Thank you for waiting, she replied, and this time her smile reached her eyes. Victoria Ashford had always known that she would marry a billionaire. It wasn't a matter of if, but when and how. From her teenage years, she had cultivated the perfect image. Educated, beautiful, connected, but not so wealthy that she didn't need a man's money. She had calculated everything, from her choice of university to the charity work that would make her seem compassionate and grounded. And then Jordan Blackwell had walked into her life exactly when she needed him to. What she hadn't calculated was how irritating she would find his fundamental decency, how his habit of asking people about their lives, of actually listening to their answers, of seeming to genuinely care about things that didn't directly benefit him, would grate against her from the inside. Jordan was supposed to be a means to an end, a 6-figure annual allowance, a penthouse on the Upper East Side, a position in society that no amount of her own work could have earned her. Instead, he was becoming a liability. The day she learned about Grace, Victoria was having lunch with her best friend Isabella at an exclusive club on Fifth Avenue. Isabella had seen Jordan with a young woman at Marcello's the previous evening. They seemed very intimate, Isabella had observed with the kind of smile that suggested she was delivering devastating news. Victoria had felt something dangerous crystallize inside her. Not jealousy, exactly. She wasn't capable of real jealousy because she had never been capable of real love. But territorial rage, possessiveness, the indignation of seeing her carefully constructed plan threatened by a common server in a cheap dress. Did you get a good look at her? Victoria asked, her voice perfectly calm. Dark hair, young, pretty. A bit mousy, if you ask me. Nothing like you. But Victoria barely heard the reassurance. She had spent the next hour on her phone, making calls, leveraging her connections. By the time she left the club, she knew everything about Grace Mitchell. Her work history, her apartment, her finances, her complete absence of a background before 3 years ago. It was as if she had been created whole at age 26, which meant she was hiding something. And hiding something meant she was vulnerable. Victoria spent the next 3 weeks carefully observing Jordan and Grace's interactions. A coincidental meeting at Marcello's, then another. A walk through Central Park, where Victoria had happened to see them from a distance, holding hands. A private dinner at Jordan's penthouse that Isabella had informed her about through the gossip mill. With each encounter, Victoria's certainty grew. This girl was a threat that needed to be eliminated. The plan had come to her fully formed one morning as she was getting ready for a luncheon. It was elegant in its simplicity, devastating in its execution. She would discredit the girl, destroy her reputation, make her toxic in Jordan's eyes. And the best part was, the girl had already made herself vulnerable by existing in such secrecy. No one knew who she really was. No one would believe her version of events. Victoria called her private investigator. "I need you to plant something," she said coldly. "Something valuable, and I need it done by next Friday." "What kind of something?" the investigator asked, already knowing he wasn't going to like this. "A pearl necklace. Vintage, authenticated, worth about $30,000. I want it planted in Grace Mitchell's apartment." There was a pause. "I'm aware of what it is," Victoria cut him off. "I also know you've done worse for smaller paychecks. Do it. And make sure it's discovered by someone who matters." The investigator hung up, and Victoria smiled at herself in the mirror. Jordan would be devastated, confused, heartbroken. He might even fire the girl himself, save Victoria the trouble of making him see reason. And then, when he was vulnerable and questioning his own judgment, Victoria would be there with sympathy and understanding. She would tell him that she had always known there was something off about Grace, that she had tried to warn him, but hadn't wanted to interfere. She was wrong about one thing, however. She had underestimated how much Jordan cared about Grace, and she had failed to account for the one variable in any plan: human nature. Grace's secrets were not what Victoria expected them to be. Grace had never been happier, which terrified her. 3 weeks of stolen moments with Jordan had created a world that existed separate from her real life, a bubble of possibility that felt too fragile to sustain. They had found a rhythm: lunch at quiet restaurants where Jordan's presence wouldn't immediately attract attention, walks through lesser-known parks, late-night conversations in Jordan's car parked overlooking the Hudson River. Jordan asked her questions, real questions about her life and her dreams, and Grace had found herself carefully editing the truth, sharing just enough to feel like she was being honest while protecting the core of her identity. She told him she had come to New York to start over, that she was from the West Coast, that her family situation was complicated. All of it was technically true, just wrapped in layers of omission. "I want to know everything about you," Jordan had whispered to her the night before, his fingers tracing the line of her jaw as they sat in his car. "All your secrets." "Everyone has secrets," Grace had replied, and she had kissed him to avoid saying more. The warning signs had been subtle at first. A text from Donna asking if she was involved with someone rich. Word had apparently gotten around about a man picking Grace up in a luxury car. A woman at the clothing store asking personal questions about where she lived and what her background was. Small things that shouldn't have mattered, but in Grace's experience, nothing ever happened for no reason. Then came Friday. Grace had been working the evening shift at Marcello's, and the restaurant was busy with the usual Friday night crowd. She was clearing a table near the window when she noticed a disturbance across the room. Giuseppe was talking urgently to a woman in an expensive dress, Victoria Ashford, though Grace didn't know who she was. The woman was holding something up, pointing to it, her face a mask of concern and shock. Grace felt the first flutter of unease in her stomach. 2 minutes later, a uniformed security guard approached her. "You're Grace Mitchell?" he asked, his tone professional but hard. "Yes," Grace said, though she suddenly knew what this was about. Or at least, she knew it was bad. "I need to speak with you in the back. Now." Giuseppe looked stricken as Grace passed him. In the back office, The security guard stood with his arms crossed. A customer has reported that a valuable item went missing from her table. A pearl necklace worth approximately $30,000. I have a witness who saw you near her table approximately 10 minutes ago. Grace's heart had stopped. I didn't take anything. I wouldn't. But even as she said it, she knew how it sounded. The victim, denying the accusation, claiming innocence. How many times had she heard someone make the exact same claim? We're going to need to search your locker and your bag, the guard said. Standard procedure. Grace had never stolen anything in her life. She had been offered opportunities countless times, situations where she could have taken what she needed, and she had always walked away. She believed in honest work, in earning what she had, in being better than the circumstances of her poverty. So when the guard found the necklace in her work bag, wrapped carefully in tissue paper, genuine, authenticated, unmistakably real, she felt the world tilt beneath her feet. I don't understand, she whispered, and she meant it. She genuinely didn't understand. I'm afraid I'm going to have to call the police, the guard said, and his regret sounded genuine. I'm sorry, but that's the policy. But before the police arrived, Giuseppe had let her go, had given her 5 minutes to collect herself while he spoke to the guard. I know her, he had said simply. She's a good girl. Something's not right here. Grace had walked out of Marcello's on shaking legs, knowing only one thing with absolute certainty. Her time in this life was over. The fragile bubble had been burst, and somehow someone had known exactly how to do it. The question was who and why. She made it 3 blocks before she saw the black car pulling up beside her. Jordan's face was visible through the window, and she almost didn't stop. She almost kept walking, disappeared back into the shadows and the anonymity that had kept her safe. But then she looked at his expression. Confusion, hurt, betrayal, all warring for dominance. And she stopped. Is it true? He asked, and the pain in his voice was worse than any accusation could have been. No, Grace said simply. I didn't take that necklace. Then how did it end up in your bag? I don't know, I really don't. Jordan stared at her for a long moment, and she could see him trying to decide whether to believe her. In the end, she watched as doubt won out over hope. His expression hardened. I think you should go home, he said quietly. We'll talk about this when I've had a chance to understand what's happened. Grace nodded, because there was nothing else she could do. She watched him drive away, and then she walked back to her apartment, packed a single bag, and began the process she had learned so well, disappearing. She would be gone by morning, her apartment emptied, no forwarding address. She would start again somewhere else, maybe Portland or Seattle, somewhere far from New York and its complications. She was writing a note to Giuseppe when she saw the security camera footage that had been released to the news. In it, unmistakably, was Victoria Ashford, placing the necklace in Grace's bag while Grace was serving a nearby table, completely unaware. The news story was already running. Billionaire's fiancée frames innocent server in shocking act of sabotage. Grace's hands shook as she watched. Victoria's plan had backfired catastrophically, and now the truth was out. But knowing the truth and knowing what it meant for her were two very different things. Because Victoria Ashford had one advantage that Grace did not. She had the kind of family that would fight to protect her, would hire the best lawyers, would make the story go away. And even if Victoria faced consequences, the real damage had been done. Grace had been found. And once you were found, you could never disappear again. Jordan sat in his office as dawn broke over Manhattan, watching the city wake up without him. He hadn't slept. He had spent the entire night going through security footage, interviews, and the documentation that proved Victoria's betrayal beyond any shadow of doubt. The necklace was authentic, purchased 3 weeks prior by Victoria herself. The footage was clear. She had placed it in Grace's bag deliberately and with premeditation. His fiancée, soon-to-be ex-fiancée, he had already called his lawyer at 4 a.m, had tried to destroy an innocent woman out of what? Jealousy? Possessiveness? A desire to maintain control? Jordan's mind couldn't quite wrap around the malice required to execute such a plan. But even as he confirmed Victoria's guilt, he found himself facing another problem. Where was Grace? He had sent a car to her apartment building at 6 a.m, instructing the driver to wait. The driver had returned at 6:45 with the news that no one had answered the door, and the neighbors reported seeing a young woman leaving early with a single bag. Jordan's heart had sunk. She was running. Marcus had arrived at the office at 7, taking in Jordan's appearance with concern. "You look terrible," Marcus said simply. "Please tell me you broke off the engagement." "Already done. Her lawyer will be calling sometime this morning." "Good." Marcus sat down heavily. "What about the server? The one Victoria tried to destroy?" "Gone," Jordan said. "I need to find her." "Do you have any idea where she went?" Jordan shook his head. He realized how little he actually knew about Grace Mitchell. He didn't know where she was from, didn't know her family's name, didn't know if Mitchell was even her real surname. She had been deliberately vague about her past, and he had respected her privacy, had assumed that eventually, when she was ready, she would tell him everything. Now that caution seemed foolish. "I can help with that," Marcus said thoughtfully. "When I was working on the background check for—" He stopped abruptly, and Jordan watched as understanding dawned on his friend's face. "Wait. When was the last time you saw her picture side by side with a photo from the Chen family?" "What are you talking about?" Marcus was already on his feet, pulling up something on his phone. He had been following the Chen family situation for months, a famous disappearance from 5 years ago that had been the subject of endless speculation in business circles. The youngest daughter, Sophia Chen, had vanished from her family's compound in Shanghai, leaving behind a note saying only that she needed to find herself. The Chens had hired private investigators, issued public pleas, but Sophia had never been found. Marcus pulled up a photograph of Sophia Chen at age 24, taken at a charity gala. Then he pulled up a recent photograph of Grace that a photographer had captured when she was leaving Marcello's with Jordan, unaware of the camera. The resemblance was undeniable. The same bone structure, the same distinctive eyes, the same subtle grace in her bearing. It was as if someone had taken the same person and showed her 5 years later, worn down by life, but still fundamentally herself. "My God," Jordan breathed. "It can't be." "Have her DNA tested," Marcus said. "But I'd bet my company it's her. I'd bet my life." What followed was a flurry of phone calls and discreet inquiries. Jordan contacted the Chen family lawyer, a man named William Zhang, who represented the Billionaire family's interests across the globe. He explained the situation carefully, leaving out nothing. Within 2 hours, William Zhang was sitting in his office, along with 2 security personnel, reviewing the footage of Grace and examining the most recent photographs. "If this is Sophia," William said slowly, "her family needs to know immediately. But we proceed carefully. Sophia disappeared for a reason, and we need to understand why before we make this public." "She was framed for a crime," Jordan said. "Her reputation was attacked to isolate her from me. She ran." "Then we need to stop her from running," William said. "Give me 24 hours. If this is Sophia Chen, I can find her. And when we do, I'll make sure she understands that she has protection, resources, and a family that wants her to come home." Jordan wanted to believe that would be enough. But he had watched Grace's face when she realized she was caught, watched the way she had immediately begun planning her escape. She had been running for 5 years, and she had become very good at it. The question was whether she would want to be found, or whether she would spend the rest of her life looking over her shoulder, waiting for the past to catch up with her again. Grace, or Sophia, as she was beginning to think of herself again, had made it as far as Philadelphia before everything caught up with her. She had taken a bus, paid in cash, checked into a cheap motel under a false name, and tried to disappear into the anonymity of another city. But the news was everywhere. Billionaire's ex-fiancée arrested in sabotage scheme, innocent server exonerated in jewelry theft, and then the inevitable. Server identified as missing Billionaire's daughter. She had seen her own face on the television in the motel lobby and felt the ground shift beneath her feet. Her parents had given a statement, their composed faces creasing with emotion as they discussed their lost daughter, the pain of her absence, their hope that she would come home. Her mother looked older than Sophia remembered. Her father's eyes were red. Sophia turned away from the television and went back to her room. She sat on the bed and called the number that had appeared on every news broadcast, the number for the Chen family's official spokesperson. Her hands shook as she dialed. "I need to speak to William Zhang," she said when someone answered. "Tell him Sophia Chen is calling." There was a long silence then. "Please hold the line." 2 minutes later, William Zhang was on the phone, his voice careful and measured. "Miss Chen, is it really you?" "Yes," Sophia said, and the words seemed to crack something open inside her. "I don't know why I'm calling. I know I should keep running. It's safer that way." "It's not safer," William said gently. "It's just lonelier. Your family has been looking for you for 5 years. They never stopped." Sophia closed her eyes. "I left for a reason, Mr. Zhang. I couldn't go back to that life. The expectations, the arranged marriage, the idea that I was just an asset to be managed and positioned. I had to get away." "I understand," William said. "But running away and coming home are two different things. You don't have to go back to the life you left. You can forge a new path, a path of your choosing." "What about Jordan?" Sophia asked, and the question surprised her with its urgency. "Mr. Blackwell is very concerned about you," William said carefully. "He's asked me to relay that he believes in your innocence and that he would like to help if you'll allow him to." Sophia felt tears sliding down her cheeks. After everything, after the humiliation of being framed, after the pain of watching his doubt, after the years of hiding, Jordan still wanted to help. The revelation was both comforting and terrifying. "I need time," Sophia said. "I can't come home yet. I'm not ready to be Sophia Chen. I don't even know if I remember how." "Then come to New York," William said. "Not to your family's house, but to a place where you can be safe while you decide what you want. Mr. Blackwell has offered his security team. Your family has offered their resources, but ultimately the choice is yours." Sophia hung up and sat in the darkness of her motel room. She could run again. She could take the money from her emergency fund, change her name again, start somewhere new. Or she could do something terrifying. She could stay. She could face the woman she had been running from, and the man who had seen her at her most vulnerable and had chosen to believe in her anyway. By dawn, she had made her decision. She packed her single bag and bought a ticket for New York. Jordan was in a state of controlled chaos by the time Sophia's plane touched down at JFK. William Zhang had assured him that she was coming, but he hadn't believed it until he saw her walking through the airport with 2 Chen family security personnel flanking her. She looked different from the Grace he had known. There was a weariness in her posture, a resignation that hadn't been there before. But there was also something new, a sense of coming home, even as she was clearly terrified about what that meant. He wanted to run to her, to pull her into his arms, and tell her that everything was going to be okay. Instead, he stood back and let her security detail bring her to the safe house that had been arranged, a penthouse in a secure building with round-the-clock protection and complete privacy. It was William Zhang who brought them together for the first time since her disappearance. The lawyer sat across from them in the living room of the penthouse, his expression grave. "Sophia, Jordan, before we proceed, there are some things you both need to understand," William said. "Victoria Ashford has been arrested on charges of fraud, conspiracy, and attempted destruction of property. The jewelry store where she purchased the necklace has confirmed that she bought it specifically for this scheme. She's facing significant prison time. Sophia felt a strange mixture of vindication and pity for the woman who had tried to destroy her. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now," William said. "Your family wants to see you. They're prepared to wait, however long it takes, but they want you to know that they love you and that they never stopped looking for you." "And my identity?" Sophia asked. "Grace Mitchell dies?" "Grace Mitchell can be whoever you want her to be," William said. "You have the legal ability to choose your own path. You can return to being Sophia Chen fully. You can maintain a dual identity, or you can create something entirely new. That choice is yours." After William left, Jordan and Sophia sat in silence. The last time they had been alone together, she had been running, had been making plans to disappear forever. Now she was here, in his safe house, protected by his security team, and everything felt fragile and new and impossibly complicated. "I'm sorry," Sophia said finally. "I should have told you everything." "I know," Jordan said. "And I'm sorry I doubted you, even for a moment." "It wasn't just a moment," Sophia said, and there was no bitterness in her voice, just truth. "You chose to believe Victoria's story over mine. That hurt more than anything she did." Jordan wanted to defend himself, to explain that he had been shocked and confused and operating on incomplete information. But Sophia was right. In that crucial moment when she had needed him most, he had failed her. "I know," he said instead. "I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you if you'll let me." Sophia looked at him for a long moment. "Tell me about Victoria," she said. "How long have you been engaged?" 6 months, Jordan said. "But looking back, I think I knew it was a mistake within weeks. I just didn't want to admit it. I wanted to believe that I could make it work, that given time, the feelings would come." "Did you love her?" Sophia asked. "No," Jordan said firmly. "I don't think I ever did. I convinced myself that what I felt was love, but it was really just comfort, familiarity, the ease of being with someone from my world. I didn't actually know her." "And do you know me?" Sophia asked. Jordan considered this carefully. "I know that you're the only person I've ever met who makes me feel like I'm not just a bank account with a face. I know that you're brave and honest and you have the capacity to love even after someone has hurt you. I know that you're complicated and you have secrets, and that's okay because you have reasons. I know that I'm falling in love with you, and I'm terrified because I've never been trusted with something this important before." Sophia stood up and walked to the window. Outside, New York sprawled before them, indifferent and immense. "I need to tell you who I really am," she said. "Not Grace Mitchell the server, and not Sophia Chen the heiress. I need to tell you about the girl in between." And so she told him. She told him about her childhood in Shanghai, about the pressure of being the eldest daughter, about the arranged marriage that had been negotiated since she was 16 years old. She told him about the night she had discovered that her fiancé, a man she had met only twice, had been using her engagement to her as cover for an affair with a family friend. She told him about the rage and humiliation, about the moment she had decided that she would rather die than go through with the wedding. She told him about the first year on her own, living in hostels and working under the table, learning to distrust anyone who showed interest in her. She told him about the loneliness, about the nights when she was so hungry she could barely think, about the moment when she realized that poverty was no more comfortable than wealth, just in different ways. And she told him about the night she walked into Marcello's desperate for a job and saw him sitting in the corner booth and felt something break open inside her that she had thought was sealed shut. Jordan listened without interrupting. When she finished, he stood and went to her. He took her hands in his and looked directly into her eyes. "I don't need to know who you were," he said. "I only care about who you're becoming, and I want to be part of that if you'll let me." "It's not that simple," Sophia said. "I have a family that wants me to come home. I have a name that comes with expectations. I have a past that's never going to go away." "I know," Jordan said. "But you also have choices. You have resources. You have people who love you. And if you'll let me, you have someone who's going to love you through all of it." Sophia's reunion with her family happened on a Thursday morning in a private room at the Peninsula Hotel. William Zhang had coordinated everything, and Jordan had wanted to be there, but had stayed away, understanding that some moments needed to belong entirely to the people involved. Her mother was the first one through the door, and Sophia barely recognized her. She had aged dramatically in 5 years, her hair now predominantly gray, her face carved with lines that hadn't been there before. For a moment, they simply looked at each other. Then her mother crossed the room and pulled her into an embrace that broke years of separation into 1,000 pieces. "I'm sorry," Sophia whispered. "I'm so sorry." "No," her mother said, holding her tighter. "I'm sorry. I was too hard on you. I wanted so desperately for you to be happy, but I went about it the wrong way. I tried to build a life for you instead of letting you build your own." Her father embraced her next, and Sophia felt him trembling. Her younger brother, Chen Wei, stood awkwardly until Sophia pulled him into a hug. He had been 16 when she left. Now he was 21, a man she didn't really know. They spent hours talking. Sophia told them about her time in New York, about the work she had done, about the lessons she had learned. Her mother cried. Her father asked questions. Chen Wei seemed fascinated by her ability to survive on so little. "What will you do now?" her father asked. "Will you come back to Shanghai with us?" "Not permanently," Sophia said, "but I want to rebuild our relationship. I want to know you as the people you are now, not as the people I was running from." "And the Blackwell boy?" her mother asked carefully. "The one who called us and told us where to find you?" Sophia smiled. "I don't know what will happen with Jordan, but I know that I want to find out." Her parents exchanged a look that seemed to carry years of unspoken communication. Finally, her father nodded. "Then we will trust your judgment, Sophia. You've proven that you can make your own choices." When Sophia returned to the penthouse that evening, Jordan was waiting. He had prepared dinner. Nothing elaborate, just simple food that required presence and attention. They ate together, and then they sat on the balcony overlooking the city, and Jordan finally asked the question he had been holding back. "What do you want to do?" he asked. "Really, truly, in your heart, what do you want?" Sophia considered. A week ago, she would have said she didn't know. But time had a way of clarifying things. "I want to find a balance," she said. "I want to be Sophia Chen when it matters, when my family needs me. But I also want to be the person I became when I was Grace Mitchell, someone who works hard, who earns what she has, who makes her own decisions. I don't want to go back to being an asset. I want to be a person." "What about us?" Jordan asked. "I want to see where this goes," Sophia said, "with no pressure, no expectations, no timelines. Just two people figuring out if what we feel is real, or if it was a product of circumstance." "And if it's real?" Jordan pressed. Sophia turned to face him. "Then I want everything. I want love that's equal and respectful. I want a partner, not a savior. I want to build something with someone who sees me fully, who knows my secrets and loves me anyway." "Sophia," Jordan said, taking her hand, "I'm going to spend every day proving that I'm capable of that kind of love. Not because I'm trying to fix something I broke, but because you deserve it." She leaned over and kissed him, and it felt like the first honest thing they had done together. No hiding, no secrets, no pretense. Just two people who had found each other against impossible odds and were deciding moment by moment to stay. 3 months later, Sophia had built a life that was entirely her own. She had hired a lawyer and established herself legally as Sophia Chen Mitchell, taking both names as a symbol of the two lives she had lived. She had registered for courses at Columbia University, starting with literature and philosophy, subjects she had always been interested in, but never been allowed to pursue. She had also taken a job at a nonprofit that helped immigrant workers navigate labor law and exploitation, work that felt deeply meaningful after her own experiences. Jordan had proved to be exactly the kind of partner she had needed, supportive without being controlling, interested without being intrusive, loving without trying to save her. He had introduced her to his world, but he had never pressured her to become part of it. They had established their own rhythm, meeting for breakfast at a diner in Brooklyn, exploring neighborhoods she had walked through as Grace, remembering the struggle but not being consumed by it. Her family had adjusted to her choices with surprising grace. Her parents visited frequently, getting to know the daughter who had been returned to them transformed by experience. Chen Wei had even come to work at one of Jordan's companies, taking an entry-level position that he was determined to advance based on merit rather than family connection. But the healing of her relationship with her family required one more conversation. Sophia requested it specifically, asking for a private meeting with her parents at their hotel. When they arrived, she was direct. "I need to tell you why I left," she said. "Not just the surface reasons, but the real reasons underneath. I left because I didn't believe you loved me as a person. I believed you loved the idea of me, the heiress you could position strategically. I felt like property being managed, not like a daughter." Her mother's face crumpled. "Sophia." "Let me finish," Sophia said gently. "I need to say this, but I also need to tell you that I've come to understand that you were doing the best you could with the knowledge you had. You were products of your own circumstances, and you were trying to give me security and position. I don't blame you anymore. I forgive you." Her father reached across and squeezed her hand. "We forgive you too," he said, "for leaving, for the years of silence, for making us worry. And more importantly, we accept you, all of you. The parts that came from our world, and the parts that you created for yourself." It was this conversation that freed Sophia completely. Not from her past. The past would always be part of her, had shaped her in ways both visible and invisible, but from the anger that had been fueling her escape. On Sophia's 29th birthday, Jordan took her to the same Italian restaurant where they had first met. Giuseppe remembered her immediately, embracing her with joy and insisting on cooking something special. The restaurant was closed to other customers for the evening, and as they ate, Jordan told her that he had something to ask her. "I know we said we would take our time," he said. "I know we agreed to see where this goes without pressure. But Sophia, I've known where this is going for 3 months now. I've known it since the moment you told me about your parents, and I realized that you were capable of forgiveness on a level I don't think I've ever seen in another person." He pulled out a ring. Not the ostentatious diamond he had given Victoria, but something more subtle and elegant, a vintage piece that had belonged to his grandmother. "I'm not asking you to be my wife because I want to rescue you or save you. I'm asking you to be my wife because you make me want to be the best version of myself. You make me believe that there's something worth having beyond all the money and power. You make me believe in love." Sophia looked at the ring, then at Jordan, then at Giuseppe, who was crying openly in the kitchen. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes to all of it." They married quietly 4 months later, in a ceremony that honored both of their families. The wedding was held at the penthouse that had become their home, a space where East and West, wealth and authenticity, power and vulnerability could coexist. Sophia wore a dress designed by a female Asian American designer, and Jordan wore a simple suit. Her parents danced with his mother, and her siblings became close with his extended family. It was not the wedding Sophia's parents had imagined for their daughter. There were no dignitaries, no strategic alliances forged, no 1,000-person guest list in a ballroom. Instead, there were just the people who loved them, bearing witness to a union that had been built on truth and forgiveness, and the willingness to see each other completely. During the reception, Sophia's father took Jordan aside. "You know that my daughter has a fortune waiting for her," he said. "The trust her grandmother set up decades ago. It was never meant to be frozen by her actions." She could access it if she chose to. I know, Jordan said. But Sophia won't. She's told me that she wants to earn what she has. She wants her life to be defined by her choices, not by her family's legacy. Her father smiled. Then she's made a very good choice in you. Take care of her. I will, Jordan said. But not the way you mean. I'll take care of her by always remembering that she's strong enough to take care of herself. I'll take care of her by loving her on purpose, every single day. A year after their wedding, Sophia stood in the apartment that was technically hers, though Jordan had lived there so completely that it had become theirs in every way that mattered. She was looking at the contracts for the nonprofit's expansion. They were opening a new office in 6 cities across the country, providing legal support and resources to immigrant workers. Sophia was spearheading the initiative. Her phone rang. It was her mother. I wanted to tell you before the announcement, her mother said. Your father and I are donating $50 million to the nonprofit. We've decided to spend the rest of our lives giving back in the way that matters to our daughter. Sophia cried as she listened to her mother explain the endowment, the mentorship program they wanted to establish, the scholarship fund for the children of immigrant workers. What had started as Sophia's personal mission was becoming a movement. That evening, as she and Jordan cooked dinner together in their apartment, Sophia found herself thinking about the journey that had brought her here. She thought about the girl she had been, desperate and frightened, working for minimum wage and $17 in her bank account. She thought about the moment she had walked into Marcello's and seen a man who made her feel like being herself was enough. What are you thinking about? Jordan asked, kissing the top of her head as she stirred pasta. I'm thinking about how sometimes the hardest thing is to trust that good things are possible, Sophia said. I'm thinking about how I was so convinced that love from someone like you was impossible because I wasn't who you thought I was, and how it turned out that the real thing was so much better because it was based on truth. Is that so? Jordan said, pulling her close. What else are you thinking? I'm thinking that I want to tell you something, Sophia said. She turned to face him, and there were tears in her eyes, but also joy. I'm thinking that I want to tell you that we're going to have a daughter in about 8 months. Jordan's expression transformed from confusion to realization to overwhelming joy. Sophia, I was going to wait to tell you, she said. I was going to do it all properly. But standing here with you, cooking dinner like this, I realize that proper isn't what matters. What matters is that I want you to know that I'm building a future with you. A real future, not just a borrowed moment. Jordan picked her up and spun her around, and through her laughter, Sophia realized that this was what she had been running toward the whole time, without knowing it. Not away from her past, but toward this. A man who loved her fully, a family that accepted her choices, work that meant something, and the knowledge that she was finally, completely, unquestionably home. 2 years later, Sophia would stand with her daughter in her arms, looking out at the city that had destroyed her and saved her in equal measure. She would think about Victoria, who had received a 5-year sentence for her crimes and was slowly learning the cost of cruelty. She would think about the girl she had been, broken and running. And she would be grateful for it all. Not because it had been easy, but because it had taught her that she was stronger than she believed. Grace Mitchell had been a fiction, a survival mechanism, a way of moving through the world undetected. But Sophia Chen Blackwell was real. She was whole. She was loved, and more importantly, she loved back with an openness that only comes from having truly lost yourself and found your way home.